Just listen. Welcome to Just Listen Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Pack, and today we're going to be talking about chocolate. And also, I'm naming this segment Chew on This. So every time I do some food talks or some talk about food, it's going to be called Chew on This. And so let's get to it. Chocolate. Why chocolate? Why am I talking about chocolate? Because after going through the coffee and how it's made, it made me think about chocolate. Because chocolate also uh, grows in the same locations as well, 20 degrees north and south of the equator. So also, cacao is native to Central and South America. The ro- the the Broma cacao is the plant name, and that also means food of the god. And so, and you'll kind of see that is how they viewed it in, especially in Central and South America. And so, the history of chocolate of cacao. This is where I found at history.com and Smithsonian Mag as well, because there's intermingling mix of thoughts of the history. But cacao was first used, and it could be traced back uh, all the way to the Olmecs. And I keep saying cacao because chocolate as we know it is not how it was eaten back then. So it was mostly a bitter, spiced drink. So think of like coffee, very similar to coffee. It was mostly a drink, and it was spiced as well. Oh, and then the Mayans had it. Then after the Olmecs, as the Mayans revered cacao, and thought it had special properties. And the Mayans also, even despite that they revered it was available for everyone. And so, everyone had access to cacao, uh, even though it was so highly revered. And then the Aztecs has got a hold of the cacao, and they traded with the Mayans, and they also revered it highly and thought that the god had given them the cacao. But in this case, they reserved it for only the elite, for the upper class, for the king. And King Montezuma is actually known to have drank a lot of this. His coffee, chocolate. It's not coffee, chocolate drink. And the cacao was so prized that it was actually used as currency. It was actually used for trade, and history has found that 100 beans could buy you a turkey hen, which is pretty crazy. That this is so great. Now here's where things get iffy: is that when chocolate comes to Europe, everyone agrees that it goes through Spain, that it came to Spain first. But who brought it to Spain is where it gets iffy. But the most common thought is Hernando Cortez when he came um, when he came to Mexico, and and King Montezuma like pretty much welcomes them, and then he gives them chocolate, and then Cortez takes it back to Spain, where everyone thought it was bitter and it was gross, and so they made it sweet. They sweetened it, And once they made it sweet, it kind of spread throughout Europe. Europe eventually, everyone was drinking it, and not really everyone, but Europe was drinking it, and and again here, it was because of the trade and is being imported, is very valuable, and so only the wealthy eh, could enjoy this. Yes, and because it was so popular, they created plantations and and grew and grew the cacao, and also because of its popularity, also introduced slaves to work these plantations as well. Yeah, pretty crazy. So meanwhile, while this is all going on in Europe, in America, chocolate was first arrived in Florida in 1641. And 1773, cacao beans were a major import. And during the Revolutionary War, chocolate was given into soldiers as rations and sometimes as payment. I don't know about you, but I don't know about being paid in chocolate. But hey, that's what happened. And but hey, the Aztecs used it as currency as well. So yeah, that's the thing. And now we get to chocolate as we know it. So chocolate, it became widely available. And became the chocolate candy bars that we know, all because of this Dutch chemist Konrad Jons van Houten, if I'm pronouncing that right. Um, and what is he doing? What did he do? What did he create? Well, he created the Dutch process, cacao, cocoa powder, and he did so by creating a press that separated the cocoa solids from the cocoa butter, there, and then he dried the solids to create a powder, and he mixed alkaline salts. I was doing that, so you get Dutch cocoa powder, and Dutch cocoa powder is neutralized because chocolate is acidic. That's why you add that. And that's why the Dutch process, you add alkaline salts, but I digress. And so this allowed people to be able to make chocolate by being able to separate the solids from the cocoa butter and then re-adding the cocoa butter and other things. In 1847, the first chocolate bar was created by Joseph Fry by adding back the cocoa butter into the Dutch cocoa. In 1868, Cadbury was marketing boxes of chocolate. 1876, Swiss chocolatier Daniel Peter added dried milk powder to make milk chocolate. So this is where you get the milk chocolate. But milk chocolate was introduced to mass markets until he worked with his friend Henry Nestle and created the Nestle Company. In 1879, Swiss chocolate Rudolf Lindt invented the conch machine, which kneads and mixes the chocolate paste to make it smooth and melt in your mouth. And so chocolate became that delicious, smooth, milkiness as we know it, all thanks to these people. Now we get to how chocolate is made. So you harvest these pods. These are pretty big pods, and you get the cacao beans, and they're actually fermented. and then a little bit, and then dried. Right, after drying, they are roasted and finally hauled to get cocoa nibs. These nibs are then ground, and that is what produces the cacao liquor, because the friction and the heat melts the chocolate, and so you get this liquid chocolate, and then from there you take the liquid chocolate and make chocolate, or you separate it into the solids and the butter. So the cocoa solids and the cocoa butter, right? And those are products of their own as well. And then if you continue to make chocolate, from there it goes into the conching process. Is right. As we remember, the Swiss chocolatier created the conch machine, and so it's there mixed to make it smooth and fine, especially the sugar crystals. And there is where also you add the different flavors, the different types to blend your chocolate. And so there are three main types: dark, white, milk. So dark chocolate is just the cocoa solids, cocoa butter, sugar, and depending on how dark the percentage is how much sugar you will add. Sometimes there'll be maybe vanilla, but basically dark chocolate is just chocolate with sugar. Milk chocolate is chocolate with sugar and milk, mainly milk powder. White chocolate is just cocoa butter and sugar and sometimes milk as well. From there, after it's mixed and blended and all together, it gets tempered. And then after tempering is molded. We'll talk about tempering a little bit later. And then you get your chocolate bar, chocolate candy, whatever, chips, all sorts of kinds of different chocolates. And then chocolate in America is chocolate, can only be called chocolate when it has cocoa butter in it. And cocoa butter is very important to chocolate because it's not only just naturally found in cocoa beans, but that is the reason why you need to temper chocolate. So what is tempering? And why do you temper? Why do they temper? Or do you need to temper? So tempering, basically the process of tempering is you're heating the chocolate, you're melting the chocolate, and then cooling it down to a working temperature. And basically what all that is doing is you're melting the cocoa butter. When you're melting chocolate, you're melting the cocoa butter because cocoa butter has a pretty low melting point. Right? And what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the cocoa butter to crystallize in a certain way so that you can have that nice melt in your mouth, shiny looking. Also, when you have like a chocolate bar, you get that kind of snap. That's also because of the tempering of the cocoa butter. Because cocoa butter, when it cools down, when it sets again, and it crystallizes it in different patterns, and you want a specific type of patterns, so you get all those good things and good qualities of good chocolate that you want. And so that's why you temper. And there's different ways to do it, and there's different processes, and we won't get too much into that. And ultimately, a lot of people may ask, why do I need to temper? And again, as I said before, check the ingredients, right? Because you only need to temper if there's cocoa butter because the whole point is making sure that the cocoa butter sets properly, so that you get those nice qualities that you want. And so if there is no cocoa butter in the ingredients, like the melted candy melts, those doesn't have cocoa butter, you don't need to temper. And that's everything about chocolate that you would possibly want to know: the history, how it's made, tempering. Sort of, I didn't teach you tempering methods, but you can always look that up on your own if you're really that interested. But I hope you guys have a better appreciation of chocolate now. I think I've gone long enough. Thanks for listening. Until next time. Bye.